right, so now we have reviewed producer surplus and consumer surplus. We're going to put it together in a graph, and what we're going to do, we're going to review allowing the effect, the welfare effect of allowing exports. So let's create our graph. And we're going to look at the producer surplus and consumer surplus. Let's go to little drawing tools here. Have a simple demand and supply model. I've got to label everything. Law of supply. It's the upward sloping marginal cost or the diminishing returns. It's our demand, our Q, and our P. And so I'm going to note, and then I'm going to erase it. What would be our equilibrium? It would be the price at which the quantity that people want to buy is equal to the quantity that people want to sell, and it's shown as the intersection. So again, going across from the left here, let's choose black. It's the price at which, so I'm going across to my price axis. The equilibrium is the price. I'm going to start here. The price at which the quantity demanded. So whenever I want to see quantity demand, I go from my price axis over to the demand, and then I would go straight down to my demand axis. And I'm going to use this price that is above the domestic equilibrium. So the domestic equilibrium is P1. And Q1. So if we didn't have any trade with the outside world, that would be produced. And I'm going to label an everything that you see separated here. I'm going to first kind of highlight it again based on what we've just done. Let's use our big, thick marker looking thing. I use the yellow. Consumer surplus is the value that the consumer is willing to pay, but that they don't actually pay for. So it's everything, total amount they value or willing to pay. Again, add up this area here, everything, so they're adding the value of each of the individual units. But the consumer surplus is the excess willingness to pay over and above what they actually pay. So what did they actually pay? Let's put the cost in. They pay P1 initially. So all of this P1 times Q1, that's how much the consumer pays. That's the cost to the consumer, but that is also the revenue to the seller. And so what's our, let's use our nice little green here. So this would be our consumer surplus, everything that they value, all that yellow area. But again, it just in your head, picture as if you were cutting out the cost to the consumers. Let's see, this is a area here that I want to kind of cut out here. Right, and literally just print it and cut it out, you'd see what's left. Right, you can also, if you print it out, cover the areas of cost, just cover it, that's not part of the surplus, but let's show the value and then cover it up. All right, so now let's go, so that would be our consumer surplus. Okay. See how far I can undo here. Right, so I'll have to identify that area below the demand curve above the price as consumer surplus. What about producer surplus? Again, try to remain a little bit consistent. I'm going to put the costs, everything again below that supply curve. It's like I'm adding up what's the cost of the first one, what's the cost of the second one. All of this is cost. So this is not the area below the supply curve. Again, I don't even have to look at the demand curve to do the producer surplus. I've just got to look at what is being, what's the quantity that's actually being produced, and the area below the supply curve, that's the cost. So what's the revenue? And let's use our little blue line. Revenue is price times the quantity, and that's represented by this rectangle. So again, picture in your mind that you've got total revenue per unit, how much you're selling the stuff for, times the amount of units you sell, but you're cutting out the cost. You literally cover it up. And what's left, and let's use our little green. So the producer surplus would be the total revenue that's left, and that would be here, right? And so that is without any kind of international trades. I'm gonna go do this a little bit differently now. And so I'm just gonna label, I'm not gonna go through the total revenue and cutting out the costs. I'm going to only highlight the areas of surplus, okay? So I'm gonna like to use my little thick marker. I'm gonna use this, let's use this, I haven't used this funny green one. All right, so the consumer surplus here without trade. The producer surplus is here, the area of revenue that you get, but above the cost. But what if you allow trade, right? So in this case, we can see the world price, if it is above, let's kind of get our text going. If you are a country with an economically efficient set of firms, they're internationally competitive, what it means is that when trade opens up, the firms in your particular country are going to be able to sell to other countries because consumers in that country are going to be able to get the product more cheaply. And so here we have exports. And so what happens when somebody in your country makes a product and they are getting a better offer? People in other countries want to buy the product. Let's now add this nice thick line here. Well, the new price they get is up here. And once again, the surplus, the amount of money they get over and above the costs, that area above the supply curve. They go above the supply curve here. So that's their new producer surplus. Okay. So this, let's use the black line here, is the new quantity that they're going to sell. But what does international competition mean when your firms are internationally competitive? It means the consumers in your country are competing with consumers from other countries. And so what's going to happen here is that if you are domestic and you're going to get this product, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to pay exactly what the foreign company is actually going to pay. Okay. And so quantity demanded only goes up to the people willing to pay or match the price from consumers from other countries. And so quantity demanded goes down in a country when your costs are, when your particular country's economic is internationally competitive. And so exports will be the excess of QS2 over QD2. All right, so it's the difference between QS2, the quantity supplied with trade and exports, and the quantity demanded. Okay, so the welfare effects, I'm going to highlight now kind of the difference here. My nice thick thing. And so my consumer surplus with that higher price is here, my producer surplus, still the area, total revenue, price times quantity, but over and above what it costs, which is the supply curve. So you see those big bold lines. I need to, any time there's a line separating, there's a bold line, I need to separately identify the areas, and only those areas that are separated by the bold lines. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to be coming back to doing the export subsidy video, but Right, now I'm going to label this here, all those areas that are, well, this didn't seem, I don't think that had to be separately identified. It's not. And it's because it doesn't have any bold lines there. Okay, so let me actually get it. Leave this part E, and it's going to be that kind of this bold line area here. So look at the welfare effects of this, and we will come back to this and do the welfare, the effect of an export subsidy or a policy intended to encourage exports.